to another episode of the Byproduct podcast. I am your host, Ian Pruckner, and I am thankful that you've decided to invest a little bit of time with me today, getting better together, because when we get better, things get better. And I'm excited to have on the show today a guest that I've actually had a chance to sit under a little bit and listen to some of her teaching, watch how she's living, seeing the impact she's making in her communities. I said, I have to have Julia Gentry on the podcast. My community needs to get introduced to her and her love for all things dreams. And dreams are such a special thing, deposited in our hearts by the dream giver himself. And yet so many people, Julia, are spending their life not living their dream, but realizing their nightmare, right? And caught in this cycle where they can't get out. They know there's more to life. They've got this calling on the inside of them, bubbling up, and they're frustrated, caught in these routines and patterns that don't let them live their life. And dreaming is what you do. Dreaming is what you help others to do. And so I just absolutely loved the content and the community and the whole essence of who you were. I said, I've got to have Julia on. So Julia Gentry, Mama 5 under 9, entrepreneur, author, community builder, coach, trainer, speaker. I mean, you've got a lot of stuff going on, but I love your heart. I love the clarity that you bring to the idea of dreaming and why it's so essential in our lives, that not only we have dreams, but that we spend our lives pursuing those dreams and eventually living in them. And so, Julia, welcome to the Byproduct podcast. It is so good to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. That is incredible. Can you walk around and say that to my family when I get up in the morning?
I will, for a small fee. I always tell speakers, I will do introductions of you, anybody that you like, right?
It's like, I don't want that. I don't want that. I'm like, well, Ian said, Ian.
Exactly. So we met, you actually came and spoke at my church, South Shore Community Church. A little plug, if you're ever in Sarasota, you need a great Bible-based church. South Shore, Nick Williams is a great place to start. We've been there for a number of years. And they don't have guest speakers very often, but you came and spoke. You did essentially like a women's event, and then you spoke over the weekend. And I was really impacted by it. I was sitting in the second row. And, as a speaker and an author, and you get a lot of people that have these sort of dreams, and they get out there, but you could tell they're not real polished, or maybe they're not in alignment and living what they're talking about. And I could just tell, like, this is something you live. This is something you breathe. It's something you've done for a long time. And it really, really spoke to me. My wife got a couple of your books and your journals, and she's really had a lot of impact. And she's like, you should have Julia on your show. So here we are. And talk a little bit about, like, how did you get into this vein? Where did this come from? Everybody has dreams. Most people do very little about them. Not you. Why?
Yeah. Oh, man. I mean, truly, I am a byproduct of the message. And so I think that that's what makes anyone a really good communicator of any level, whether you're a mom, a speaker, a business owner, is that when we are living the message that we are serving to the world, it just makes a big difference. Now, in the messy middle, I would have said, no, I hate this. Like, I do not want to learn this lesson, right? Because we all want patience. We don't want to learn patience. We all want to be successful. We don't always all want to be successful and walk that journey out. But for me, Ian, it really started after my husband and I had hit a couple of home runs in real estate. Sounds like we have some similarities there. We didn't actually sustain our journey as well as you did. So after our home runs in real estate, 2008 to probably 2011, we were managing, 60 to 70 short sale files. We were flipping them. We had bought and sold millions of dollars worth of real estate. We did very well early on. Only we landed $100,000 in debt living in my basement. So our journey kind of took a couple steps back before we launched into really understanding the mindset principles around how do you think about money? How do we think about business? How do you think about people? How do you think about God? We started our journey around how to think, because as you and I know, mindset matters. Then it got me into doing business coaching simply because I figured I could give my pain purpose. And it was an opportunity. Someone says, hey, we could pay you to teach people what you know. I'm like, okay, great. Pay, like at some level as an entrepreneur, you're like, problem, I can solve that. No financial limits. I like it. So that started me in the journey of doing business coaching. I did that for about 4 years. And ultimately, that's what landed me smack dab into the realities of what I'm doing now, which was ultimately what we call the gap, right? And the gap is the difference between where you are and where you want to be. The gap between your dreams and your reality, right? The prophecy and the fulfillment of the prophecy. And all of us know those 2 points very well, but there's not a whole lot out there that teaches about the gap. How do you do the messy middle? How do you do the awkward until awesome? And so my husband and I decided to dive in, not only for the sake of our community, but for us, because at that time we had rebuilt our lives. We had quote unquote, built the American dream again, the house, the cars, the 2.5 kids. We were successful, but not fulfilled. And it wasn't that anything was wrong. It just wasn't aligned. And
Yeah.
so we decided to sell everything, travel the country in an RV. And that's really where the notion around the dreaming came. But it was my undoing and God teaching me and bringing me closer to go, No, you think you know what dreaming is. You've got no idea.
Mm.
He show you. And then over the course of the next 5 years, he revealed to me just a different way to look at it. And is now what we do in helping people bridge the gap and understand what does it really mean to dream bold.
Yeah. One of the things I love, Julia, is that idea of the gap. I always tell people the biggest gap in the world is the gap between knowing what to do and doing what to do, right? And you said like the start and the end, people are clear, but it's that process and that pathway in the middle that people don't, they're not equipped with, they're not empowered with. And there's what I found in my life is very similar, right? Like there's a lot of opportunity in that pathway. If you can learn it and live it for yourself, you become very valuable to the people who want to follow in that step. So that's really pretty amazing. And you sort of had a dream deferred, right? Like you got a taste of that dream and then all of a sudden it went away and God's like, hey, wait, you're not who I need you to be yet for the continuance of this. Like, let's go to 2.0. And it was in that 2.0 that all of this sort of outcropping has occurred, right? Which is really pretty amazing to watch because it probably wasn't fun going through it. A lot of times we find ourselves in positions of adversity and we're like, God, why is this occurring? Yeah. And what I found is it's a test sometimes it's a lesson, and sometimes it's a refinement, right? And it sounds like you were being refined in that to like, hey, what really matters to me? Who am I? What do I want? What's important? What's the call on my life? I think that's really profound there. Says out of this problem comes this sort of promise that you walked into. So talk to me a little bit about that and the dream and the ideas around the dream. Where did that come from?
Yeah. So for me, and why the book is titled Dream, I Dare You, is because all of us have a dream. To your point, very few manifest their dreams, right? And that word manifest is a funny word for most people because they're like, I don't know if I like that word. All it means is to show. It means to display. What that means, Ian, is that dreaming isn't separate from doing. It's one and the same. It is the
Yeah.
same thing. And so for me, I started to realize that it's actually less about having a dream. And even people go, well, I don't really know what my dream is. No, you always know. I'm a firm believer. You never don't know. It's just, are you willing to know? Are you willing to lean in? And so the idea here was not around, okay, God, nobody's dreaming, but is why is it that we have dreams, but very few are bridging the gap? When, it's almost like, especially in the information age, you and I could Google how to do anything, how to lose weight, how to move across the country, how to build a successful business. And we'd find pages and pages and pages of answers. Yet the more we Google, the less we know.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, that to me, that's why growth is so fascinating. So people go, you life coach? I'm like, no, like that is, you do you. Like your life is your life. No, I'm a growth coach because I'm fascinated by growth, how it is available to all of us. It plays no favorites. All of us love the idea of it. Very few of us actually want to do it. Right. And so what I started to learn in this journey of mindset, heart set, and dream set was that there are limiting beliefs, right? That most of us we know the concept, we know the context of what they are, but we don't actually know what ours are. We also don't have a vision that's bigger than this life to live for. So we're not hanging our dreams under our visions. We're hanging our dreams under our fears, which means we're running away from the things that we're afraid of more than we're running to the things that we desire most. We also lack conviction, a burn. We don't have the thing that gets us out of bed in the morning and keeps us going in those hard days. We don't have boundary lines that are in alignment with where we're going. We have boundary lines against you, and well, they treat me bad. And like, so we have all these boundary lines that's creating division, but they're not actually in alignment with where we're going. And then I have no ability to dream stack my way, which means in the midst of my busy day, because life happens and kids happen and right, the economy happened, like all the things that are happening. But most of us have very little ability to know how to, what I call dream stack on the daily, stack your wins, stack your dreams to get to where you want to be in the midst of all of that. And so that's why I wrote the book, is because for 8 years, God had me principle by principle, step by step, moment by moment, learning these things with zero intention at the time of writing a book. I just wanted my life to be better. That then at some level we're like, we should do this. We should do this. And that's ultimately where the Dream Factory was birthed and where we are today.
Yeah, the book was really a byproduct of your process, right? It's like, hey, all I'm going to do is document what God has taken me through, right? That's helped me. Gosh, you said so many amazing things there. Everybody has a dream, but most people aren't doing anything about it. Why? And you hit on that belief. So in a book that I wrote, I talk about an idea called T-bar: thoughts, beliefs, actions, results, right? And our results are ultimately a byproduct of the actions or the inactions, right? And that's where most people try to fix stuff. It's like, oh, I want to lose weight. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to eat better. And that makes sense. And that is what's causing that. But those actions are not an island. They're not just poofing out of nowhere. They're being caused by what we believe. There's a reason we didn't honor our bodies in the way that we should. And it didn't have to do with all the bad food we ate. That was the byproduct of the belief that
Yeah.
maybe we didn't deserve it, or maybe weight loss doesn't work for us the way it works for everybody else, or whatever sort of erroneous or limiting belief that we hold. How do you unearth, and unseat some of those beliefs that are causing us to be bound between the dream and the destination?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's my favorite part. I'm quite the challenger, right? And that's why I say again, this is not for the faint of heart. This is for those of heart. And so, for me, we actually identified a belief formation equation, which walks people through understanding how the brain is actually shaped. Right? Psychology is really important. And for me, my background, Ian, though I grew up in the church, I've been more marketplace. So I was in business world. So when God asked me to start venturing into the church, I was like, no way, I'm not doing that. And so this has actually really been a journey of where the world in and of itself really understands the power of psychology and skill set and right mindset. But the church is very interesting when you start talking about that, because they kind of leave that out, right?
Yeah.
And then I think what happens is the world is leaving out the heart set and the spiritual set and the importance of the fact that we're not wrestling against flesh and blood. We're wrestling against principalities and powers of darkness, right? You put all those together and now you got magic. And so for us, when we really sat down, there's a piece of the psychology of the brain, and that we have early moments that shape the way that we become later on, and it's creating those patterns in our brain, right? And so there's a formation that actually starts, that creates it has an experience that creates an interpretation, which we confirm to be true, which all of a sudden we go, well, then that must mean something about me. And then it actually walks us through our own belief equation that we didn't even know we had. And so we help people actually unpack what that is. And then it shows 10 out of 10 times how much that belief that started way back when is causing me to get stuck right here. You connect those dots, and that's where we start to see transformation. Is now we go, oh, that's why I start but don't finish, or that's why I have a million ideas but I don't take action, or that's why I'm doing the same thing expecting a different result, because it's the thing under the thing. It's the pattern.
It's so good. Awareness is the first step of change. And most people are largely unaware, I found, about why they do what they do and why they don't do what they don't do. They don't know, right? But that's important, because how do you battle against something you can't define? And most people have the wrong battles. They're battling their spouse, they're battling the diet, they're battling this, that, and the other thing, when they should be battling a belief
Yeah.
that is stopping them in their tracks. So talk about this, because I'm very interested in these subjects as well. How do you reprogram a new and better belief? So,
Yeah.
okay, I have this belief that's stopping me. It's not serving me. It's not helping me to live in my potential or to realize my destiny. Now what?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that there's a couple of pieces there. Number one, I have to understand where it came from. A lot of times, if I can really understand that, oh my God, what I'm running up against is valid, I think we have to validate what we're thinking. Like, think about it being in your marriage with your kids. If your kids are saying, well, dad, but I just want the caffeine. I just want the candy. If you go, I hear you. They don't actually want to be right. They want to be heard.
Hmm.
Think about the last conversation with your wife when it was my husband. I call it intense fellowship, right? I actually don't want to be right. I just want him to look at me and go, I hear you. Right? You say that to your wife, I guarantee you, Ian, you will win. All you just go, baby, I hear you. She's gonna be like, okay. We also want to be heard, right? So when
Right.
we hear our thoughts, Ian, first and foremost, or my emotions, I just have to validate it like, I hear you. And actually, that makes a ton of sense. But what happens is we start to let our past predict our future. So I take my past and now I idolize it. So instead of hearing it, I begin to idolize it. And the moment that my past and my pain becomes an idol, I begin to worship it and I can't see anything else.
Hmm.
So what we have to do is go, oh, okay, I hear you. I feel you. I get where you come from. I actually have to understand it. Then I have to go, but that's not who we are. And what happens is your brain needs a pattern interrupt, right? So part of what's happening in the brain from a psychology perspective is I'm creating pathways in the brain. They're neural pathways that are automatic. I have to go, wait a minute, we don't do that anymore. I got to stop the brain. Once the brain stops, it's going to go, well, where do you want to go? First part is you go, I don't know, just don't do that. I don't know yet. Because what happens is a lot of us try to falsify truth. Like, well, I am a child of God. And you're like, I don't believe that. Okay, well, don't go that far yet. Like, don't lie to yourself. Don't go so far that you're gonna go, I don't actually believe that. So then great, but pause the negative thought. When I can pause it, then what I've trained myself and thousands of others to do is first go, great, that's not who we are. That's not how we think anymore. Then you got to pause. Well, how do I think? Well, let's say I am a child of the Most High God. Let's say that He has given me everything that I need to succeed. Let's just say that I could live in a world that I create uninhibitedly. What would you do next? Then the brain goes, well, I'd make the phone call. I'd quit my job. I'd go for it. I'd go for a run. I'd get a gym membership. Like if I was free and I knew that God had my back, I'd do a few push-ups. Great. Do that. Then you do a few push-ups. What did I do? Now I actually acted my way to a new way of thinking and I didn't die. Like I wasn't rejected after doing push-ups. I didn't die after going to the gym. Like I actually go, okay, like maybe it wasn't perfect or maybe but I didn't die. And what that does is now actually I'm creating a safety emotionally that the thing I fear the most isn't actually going to kill me. I create a new pathway in the brain, right? That stops old patterns. I create that awareness piece that you're talking about. And then instead of you and I both know today, we're on the other side of so much where we aren't downplaying God's truth to fit the narrative, but we're honoring our process in learning to believe the truth. And that's where I think the disconnect is most people are trying to like fake the truth. No, just honor your process of learning God's truth in a way that you don't understand. And then over time, what starts to happen is you run up against that same pattern and you go, that's not who I am. Well, who am I? I'm a child of God. You're like, yeah, I am. I'm successful. Yeah, I am. Like, you're strong. Yes, I am. Watch, I do push-ups. I make phone calls. I do hard things. I've quit my job. I have hard conversations. And now I've got the evidence that's stacked in my favor, right? You do that over and over and over again. You and I both know this, that practice makes permanent. Doesn't make perfect. It makes
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah, absolutely. One of the concepts that you're talking about there is you're trying to create new beliefs is you got to recognize it first. You can't change what you're unaware of, right? And then you got to reprogram. That's what you're talking about. You're creating sort of a reinforcement loop there, right? Like, hey, I'm open to something new because I've recognized that what I have isn't serving me or isn't right or both. And so I'm gonna start acting in that way. I'm gonna get a little bit of reinforcement that I can do those things, that those things are helpful to me. And so you are able to reinforce and reprogram through repetition there. That's what you're talking about, right? So that's pretty amazing. I know, before the show we were chatting a little bit and you said, man, I just have a lot of opportunity or a lot of energy about the routine behind the dream
Mhm.
and getting into alignment and having sort of this process here that can bring about. Talk a little bit about the routine behind the dream. What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So I am, if I'm putting myself on blast for a minute, I tend to break rules. Like I was that kid that my mom was like, eat your broccoli. I'm like, I'm not doing that. She's like, fine, don't eat your broccoli. I was like, great. I will eat all of my broccoli. Like it was just, I've just always kind of been one of those that likes to challenge those rules. And so for me, I've never thought much about routines. I like to wake up and decide what I'm going to do. And I don't like doing the same thing over and over again. And the minute someone says you got to do that, I'm like, great, I'm absolutely not going to do that. So I've had to work on those areas within my life. Anyways, I started to realize that the reality of my life is that we don't not have a routine. All of us have a routine, even me, the rule breakers, even me who wake up and go, no, I just decide what I'm going to do. No, we always have a routine. It's not that we don't have a routine. We just don't have a routine that's aligned. And so for me, about a year and a half ago, I hit a point in the growth of my business and we just had our fifth baby that I was like, this isn't going to work. This is not sustainable. The pace, what's on my plate, the way that I'm approaching my day. And so out of just desperation, Ian, I started a new morning routine that I started to call a rise and align. Like that was it for me. And I had to reprogram some of my routine, not because it was bad, right? Like any entrepreneur knows that how you start your day matters, but I actually was not aligning my day with my dreams. I was just going about a morning routine that was supposed to help me think better, but I wasn't being better by the
Or
end.
doing all the things, right? All the things that you're supposed to be doing versus the things that are in your wheelhouse and make a difference for you.
Totally. Yeah. Right. Or you get up and I was so rote in it that I wasn't actually in it. And So anyways, I started this process out of desperation. It turned into magic within my own life. I mean, I could see clearer. I was up at 4:30 after my fifth baby. I mean, we've hired yeah, eight staff members with, in this last year, we have a team that's incredible. So when I say that this is, if I can do it, so can you, I mean it. But it's turned into a movement within our community of people who are now learning what it means to arise and align. It's a 15-minute routine. I even wrote this dream journal that goes along with my book to support people in understanding that here's the truth. Your mindset matters, your heart set matters, your dream set matters. Mindset is the frame of mind. Heart set is your frame of heart. Dream set is your frame of action, right? Toward your dreams. Most of us say, well, I don't have time. You don't not have time. It's never a time issue. It's a priority issue. It's an alignment issue. So what we really focus on in this routine is going, all right, how do I prime my mind and my heart and my actions to ensure that I am on par with where I want to be, right? Not just what's happening to me today, but how do I happen to my day and ensure that I'm giving 2 to 3 things per day towards my dreams, right? That over time, you and I know compound effect, right?
Yep.
Is ultimately going to get me to where I want to be. That is just kind of as a community where we are hunkered down for the last 3-6 months, and we are seeing incredible transformation.
Yeah. I love what you talked about earlier when we were pre-show, just kind of chatting through, and you talked about alignment over balance, right? And the idea of balance is many times a myth. And for those of you who watch the show a lot, I talk about sort of the 3 universes of balance: time, resources, and emotion, right? Like, people think about balance as where their time goes predominantly, but it's also where our attention goes. Like you were talking about doing the routine and going through the motion. That's a lot different than showing up to that routine with your heart right and your mind right, there to do business, right? We approach that. It's like having a waiter that's just doing their job and having a waiter that loves the food and loves the menu and loves cooking and loves the art. It's a totally different experience, and they economically profit very differently. Like, that guy gets the minimum. That lady is like, dude, we went to a place in Las Vegas that I go to every time that I'm there. It's called Bizarre Meats, and it's like one of the best steak houses in the world. Like, you can get some of the rarest steak. And we had one lady one time, and she was like a meat connoisseur. I mean, she's talking about, this cut is from this place, and this is how they take care of the animals, and this is the process, and it's just spectacular in this way, and they pair it here. And we were there on a company event, and our CFO pulled her over afterwards, like, this was the best dining experience I ever had. I've never met anybody who loves food as much as you. And it was a joy to see them. But she was in alignment with what she was doing, right? Like,
Good.
and so talk a little bit about that alignment over balance,
Yeah.
because there are a lot of people who are striving for balance, and all they get is balanced mediocrity in their life.
Oh,
They're not good at any of it because they want to be balanced in all of it.
yeah. I think what happens with balance is true. I think it's the world's way of convincing us of a yesterday strategy that isn't working. So if you get on Pinterest and you're like, balance, seek balance, you're like, stop doing that. That is the enemy's ploy to stretch your capacity in the wrong way. God wants our capacity to be aligned from heaven to earth, right? That's our mantle, is that we live from heaven's realities to earth's realities. It's one of those like slippery, like it's not bad, but it's not great, right? And so when we're trying to create this balance, it's almost like we become this false responsibility that we got to balance all of these things, right? And to your point, in a certain amount of time and in a certain amount of way, and I got to make sure that all of these things are taken care of, said nobody who's great, right? If you think about Moses, Noah, gosh, Martin Luther King, anyone who's done anything great, they were completely out of quote unquote balance, but they were totally in alignment with the call that was on their life. And so oftentimes when I think about alignment, I think about, instead of taking everything from side to side, you're taking it from top to bottom and going, okay, God, heaven first, you, right? Then my family, then my work, then my people, all the things that and then there's times in that, just like children, you and I have multiple kids. You and I would never say we love one kid more than the other, but we do like one kid more than the other at times. Right? I've learned as a parent, there's times that there's one child that just really needs mommy more than the other. And so what that means is that I actually stack them above, right, the other. That's not in importance. That's just in attention. That means that kid is going to get more attention because they need me more, not because I love them less.
Yeah.
Right. And so what happens as we're growing is we have to kind of look at, go, okay, God, what needs the most attention in my life right now to go where you've called me to go, to do what you've asked me to do. And when we're really in that place and in that heart posture, surrendered to that priority of heaven, we really start to recognize what needs our attention, and then we can prioritize accordingly. Alignment creates sustainability. So the last thing I'll say on this is, well, how do I know if I'm in balance or alignment? Balance is not sustainable. It's very exhausting. It's unachievable. It's not satisfying. It's not fulfilling. It's not sustainable. Alignment is very sustainable. It's something that you're like, I can't not do this.
Sure.
Right. So that's a huge way to know that, okay, I'm aligned here, because it's actually really sustainable.
And I love the visual you gave of like the width versus the depth, right? And what I took there, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, is it's not like any less work. You're actually doing the same amount of work probably, but you're just stretching it over a more narrow focus where you can have a depth of proficiency and skill set and mastery and richness and nuance. It's the same work, but it feels different because it's in alignment with who we are and where we're going and what we're supposed to do. We're not all called to the same thing. We can't all be preachers preaching to each other under the viaducts because we're all homeless and trying to get a love offering from each other, right? It doesn't work that way. There's preachers and there's business people and there's mothers and then there are seasons in which our alignments move and we can have those focuses. It's so good. I wish we had some more time to dive into this because it's been a really fun conversation. Julia, how do people connect with you? Where do they find you to get to know more about you, more about your resources, more about your community?
You're awesome for asking. Anything is the Julia Gentry on all platforms. And then I'm even, for your listeners, we have my it's a 15-minute video that I walk people through this 15-minute routine, this morning routine. And you can learn more about that if you go to thejuliagentry.com/align. There's a whole download, a video, the internal pages of my journal, free for your audience.
Oh, that's amazing. Guys, listen, go check that out. You all know I'm a freak on consistency, right? It's the little things done daily that create the big wins that everybody wants. And so how do we get great at the little things that everybody else brushes off? And that a big part of it is getting in routine and in rhythm, right? That's one of the things we talk about in our communities all the time. It's the rhythm. It's the rhythm. It's the rhythm. Once you get into that, it's hard to get out of it, and you succeed as a byproduct of that process. And it's actually the joy in the journey is the value. It's like the thing at the end of the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is amazing, but who you became in chasing that rainbow was even more amazing, because then you can chase a new rainbow and eventually teach others how to chase theirs because you've done it a few times. And it's pretty amazing. Julia, thank you so much for your time today. I know how busy you are. It's been hectic trying to connect. We got it done. And guys, listen, make sure thejuliagentry.com, make sure to follow the instructions she gave you to get that free download and check out that 15-minute sort of routine. Julia, thanks so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure, and I'm excited to be able to do some more stuff together here in the future. Until next time, we will see you soon. Thanks, everyone.